There will come a day when your name is no longer followed by a question mark, but by a legacy. And that day starts today. I'm not here to tell you who you should be. I'm here to remind you that you already are enough, bold, and capable of shaping a day so unforgettable it echoes long after the sun sets. Why stay? Because this moment might be the one that changes how you see your entire life. This isn't just another speech. It's a mirror held to your future, and the reflection is nothing short of legendary. We live in a culture that glorifies the exceptional. We are taught to celebrate only the most visible, the most followed, the most applauded. Somewhere along the line, we began to believe that making a difference was reserved for those born with genius, influence, or access to unimaginable resources. But this belief, though persistent, is deeply flawed. It invisibly diminishes the value of daily acts, quietly unravels our confidence, and convinces us that our lives must be larger than life to matter. In truth, it is not the spotlight that makes someone impactful. It is the intention behind what they do with the light they have. Ordinary people shape extraordinary outcomes not in bursts of applause, but in consistent, quiet choices. A single parent raising a child with love and grit is performing radical, world-shifting work. A student who stands up for a peer when no one else will reshapes someone's belief in kindness. A nurse on the night shift, an artist who keeps painting despite being overlooked, a teacher who refuses to give up on their students. These are not stories that often make headlines, but they are the ones that build the foundation of progress. These are acts of devotion and courage that ripple beyond what we can immediately see. They are legendary, not because they are loud, but because they are deeply, enduringly human. There is something inherently powerful about someone who chooses to show up day after day, not because it is easy or glorified, but because it is right. There is no ceremony for those moments, no trophy, no viral post, and yet they define the soul of a society. The extraordinary isn't an elite status reserved for the few. It is embedded in how ordinary people respond to their moments of truth. Do they stay silent or do they speak? Do they ignore or do they lean in? Do they step forward even if no one is watching? Too often, we underestimate the scale of what a single act of empathy, responsibility, or resilience can ignite. But every movement in history began with one person deciding enough was enough. Every ripple begins at the surface of a single decision. So, the truth is not that the ordinary can sometimes do the extraordinary. The truth is that the extraordinary is born from the ordinary again and again when someone decides their values matter more than their fears. Perfection is a seductive illusion, a shimmering, unreachable horizon that convinces us to keep waiting. It tells us we are not ready, not polished enough, not smart enough, not qualified. It tricks us into silence, into hesitation, into hiding our ideas and withholding our presence. We hesitate to speak because the words might not come out just right. We delay action because we fear the result won't be flawless. We shrink ourselves in rooms we deserve to stand tall in, all because we've been taught to value precision over participation, approval over authenticity. But what if the goal was never to be perfect? What if the true act of bravery was to be real? Courage, by its very nature, is imperfect. It stumbles, it trembles, it doesn't wait to be ready. It acts because the moment calls for it, not because the conditions are ideal. To choose courage is to acknowledge the possibility of failure and move forward anyway. It's to send the email, speak the truth, start the project, ask the question, not because we know how it will turn out, but because we believe something important is at stake. While perfection keeps us frozen in place, courage is movement, it is motion, it is messy and raw and human, and therefore it is deeply transformational. The stories that change lives are never polished at the start. They begin in uncertainty. The people we most admire, the inventors, the artists, the leaders, did not wait until they felt bulletproof. They walked into rooms where they didn't feel like they belonged. They launched things before the world believed in them. They failed, often publicly, and still continued. They knew something we are all learning, that the act of showing up wholeheartedly, without the guarantee of success, is what creates momentum. It's not the absence of flaws that inspires us. It's the courage to persist in spite of them. We must reframe our relationship with fear, not as a stop sign, but as a signal, a sign that we are stretching, growing, daring. Perfection says, "Do not begin until you are beyond reproach." But courage says, "Begin. You are already enough." And in that brave decision to begin, we carve out space for others to do the same. When we stop pretending to be invincible, we make it safe for others to be honest. When we choose courage over perfection, we do more than just move forward. We build a world where people are allowed to be in progress, not just polished. There is a moment, quiet, personal, often unnoticed by the world, when a person decides to speak. It can be a whisper, a question, a refusal, a truth that's been aching to escape. This moment may not make headlines, but it shifts something irreversible in the person who dares to claim it. Speaking up is rarely comfortable. In fact, it can be terrifying. But buried beneath that fear is power, a kind of power that does not rely on volume or authority, but on authenticity, on truth, on the raw, unfiltered decision to say what must be said, even when the room isn't ready to hear it. We are not born silent, we are taught to be. Taught to shrink in the presence of tradition, to nod along when we want to challenge, to bite our tongues in order to keep the peace. Silence is too often praised as polite, while honesty is mislabeled as rebellion. But the real danger lies in withholding our voices, not in using them. When we stay silent in the face of injustice, we reinforce it. When we remain quiet in moments that call for truth, we become complicit in the very systems we wish to change. Our voice is one of the last things we truly own. To use it wisely is an act of liberation, not just for ourselves, but for everyone who has not yet found the strength to speak. There is immense strength in a voice that trembles and speaks anyway. There is no requirement that you be fearless, eloquent, or loud. There is only the need to be honest. Your story, however broken, however unfinished, carries weight. It may be the exact story someone else needs to hear, to believe that they, too, can stand up. When you speak, you become a bridge between silence and awareness, between isolation and solidarity. You become the echo that reminds others they are not alone. And sometimes the boldest thing you can do is simply say, "This is what I see, this is what I feel, this is what I know to be true." In a world that often benefits from our silence, when systems grow stronger the longer we keep quiet, speaking up becomes a form of resistance. It is not about argument. It is not about winning. It is about presence. It is about choosing to be visible, even when invisibility feels safer. It is about saying, "I was here. I mattered, and I will not be erased." Every time someone uses their voice with intention, something shifts, not always immediately, not always visibly, but the act itself creates a ripple, a disruption to the still waters of silence, and those ripples, over time, build waves. In a world that often rewards sharpness over softness, where urgency is confused with importance and dominance is mistaken for strength, choosing kindness can feel strangely out of place. It is frequently dismissed as naive, weak, or performative, a pleasant accessory rather than a driving force. But true kindness is anything but passive. It is not a default or a lack of options. It is a deliberate, often defiant act of will, to meet cruelty with empathy, to answer indifference with attention, to remain tender in a culture that numbs and hardens. That is not weakness, that is resistance. Kindness, in its truest form, requires courage. It asks us to extend understanding when it would be easier to retreat into judgment. It asks us to see people, really see them, not just for who they are in this moment, but for who they are becoming beneath the surface of their struggle. It demands that we risk vulnerability, that we give without expecting applause or return. There is nothing fragile about that kind of giving. In fact, it is one of the most daring things a person can do, to remain kind when the world does not make it easy, to lead with grace even when your heart is tired and your patience is worn thin. What makes kindness revolutionary is that it disrupts the narrative that power must always come from force, that value is earned through competition, or that survival depends on keeping our guards up. Kindness flips that script. It introduces trust where there is fear, connection where there is isolation, humanity where there is efficiency. It restores dignity in places where it has been stripped away. When you choose kindness, intentional, rooted, and unwavering, you are telling the world, I will not become what wounded me. I will not answer pain with more pain. I will not devalue others to feel worthy myself. This kind of kindness does not mean turning away from injustice or remaining silent in the face of harm. It means calling it out with compassion rather than contempt. It means drawing boundaries with clarity and care, not with vengeance. It means holding others accountable, not to punish them, but to invite them to be better. There is an edge to this kindness, a depth that goes beyond manners or surface smiles. It is the force that rebuilds what anger alone cannot. It is the quiet backbone of change, because while cruelty may shout, kindness endures. It does not need to be loud to be heard. It does not need to be seen to be real. And when practiced consistently, especially when it's hardest to give, it becomes a form of rebellion, the kind that doesn't burn down but builds up. From the moment we are old enough to understand language, the world begins whispering its version of success into our ears. It sounds like applause, trophies, corner offices, immaculate resumes, numbers that rise, and titles that impress. We're taught to chase outcomes, to climb ladders, to measure our worth in achievements visible to others. And slowly, almost without noticing, we start living according to a blueprint that wasn't drawn by us. We begin to shape our choices not around our values, but around someone else's expectations, parents, teachers, institutions, systems. But beneath all of that noise, there's a quieter voice, one we often ignore. It asks, what if success looked different for you? Success does not need to be loud to be valid. It doesn't need to be celebrated publicly to be deeply meaningful. Sometimes success is leaving a toxic environment. Sometimes it's choosing rest in a culture obsessed with productivity. Sometimes it's raising a child with love, staying sober another day, healing from a trauma, saying no when you've spent years saying yes. Sometimes it's simply waking up and showing up when everything inside you wants to give up. The world may not give you awards for these things, but that does not make them any less victorious. When you allow yourself to define success on your own terms, you begin to reclaim the parts of yourself that have been buried beneath comparison. Real success is alignment, living in harmony with who you are, not just who you're expected to be. It's not about the pace of your progress, but the direction of your growth. You can have less by external standards and still be rich in purpose, relationships, and integrity. You can walk away from something prestigious and move closer to something peaceful. You can choose a smaller life in the eyes of the world and a fuller one in your soul. That kind of success won't always be understood, but it will be felt, deeply, honestly, and entirely. There is something incredibly powerful about someone who chooses to write their own definition of enough, to look around at the conventional milestones, the titles, the timelines, the polished expectations, and say, that's not mine. To measure success not by what they've accumulated, but by how much of themselves they haven't had to lose in the process. That is strength. That is clarity. That is liberation. Because when success is defined by your own compass, not someone else's map, every step forward becomes an act of self-respect, not self-sacrifice. When we think of legacy, we often imagine something far off, something tied to old age, to monuments built in our name, to pages in history books written long after we're gone. We imagine it as the culmination of a lifetime, a grand finale reserved for the extraordinary or the famous. But this idea of legacy is misleading. It pushes impact into the future as if it can only be measured once we're finished living. The truth is much quieter, more intimate, and more immediate. Legacy isn't something we leave behind. It's something we build with every single choice we make, and it's unfolding in real time, right here, right now. The way you speak to someone when no one else is watching, that's legacy. The promise you keep even when it's inconvenient, the apology you offer with sincerity, the way you show up for someone without being asked, these are not small things. These are the roots of the story others will tell about you. Every interaction becomes part of the fabric you're weaving, and it's not just about others remembering you. It's about you remembering yourself, living in such a way that, in the quiet moments when no one is clapping, you are still proud of who you are becoming. That you do not have to wait for a larger platform or a bigger title to start making your life meaningful. Legacy is not built in declarations, it is found in devotion. To your principles, to your people, to your purpose. It's how you treat the barista, the intern, the stranger. It's in the daily, repeated decision to act with character even when you are exhausted, even when you feel invisible. These moments compound, they echo, and whether or not they are ever publicly acknowledged, they matter. They shift something in the people around you. They create a sense of trust, of depth, of realness, the kind that lingers far longer than any performance or accolade ever could. So often we're told to chase legacy through accomplishments, to build empires, to chase numbers, to aim for things that look impressive on paper. But real legacy is felt, not just seen. It is the warmth you leave behind in a room after you've gone. It is the way people feel when they think of you, not because you dazzled them, but because you made them feel seen, safe, understood. Legacy begins the moment you decide to stop performing and start participating fully in your own life. It begins not in what you plan to do someday, but in how you choose to show up today. You don't have to wait for some far-off future to be proud of who you are. The stage is set. The pen is in your hand. Write today like it will be told for generations. Because this day, if you choose to claim it, will be legendary, not because of what the world gave you, but because of what you dared to give the world.